pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, good morning. Welcome to, this is what we call the Hack, the Holmes Art Cellar. This is where we meet for our program called Engage, which offers awesome things for adults 50 and over. So if you are retired or you know somebody who's retired and you're looking for some fun things to fill your day with, look us up because we've got it for you. Today we're privileged to welcome 3 extraordinary veterans who have selflessly served our nation across multiple decades. Each have a unique journey and profound dedication. First, we have Ed Gehrke. He's already standing, so I'm going to start with him. He served in the United States Navy during the Vietnam era from 1965 to 1967. Next, we welcome Dave Knopf. He led us in the pledge. He was drafted into the Army in 1971 during the Vietnam War. After his initial service, he continued his dedication to our country by serving in the Army National Guard from 1973 to 1998, where he retired as a respected company first sergeant. And finally, we're honored to introduce Curt Erickson. He joined the National Guard in 1965, right out of Detroit Lakes High School, and dedicated his career to serving our country up until his retirement in 2000. The steadfast commitment and years of service these men have given exemplify true loyalty and dedication. In their honor, 100% of today's proceeds will be donated to the Honor Flight organization. We have Angie Christensen here from the organization. So if you feel moved to contribute any further, a donation box is located at the back of the room, next to the coffee. So please join in warmly welcoming Ed, Dave, and Curt, who are here today to share their experiences from the Honor Flight and a journey of reflection and remembrance of those who served. All right.
I got one thing I could
Yes.
start with. Okay, well, I had to, let's see, in her book, I don't know how this all come, how she's gonna do the pictures. Anyway, on September 22nd to the 24th, the Veterans Honor Flight in Minnesota and North Dakota was flown approximately 2,302 Korean, World War II, Vietnam veterans to Washington. This flight there was 2 planes, consists of 215 living veterans, 213 men, 2 women, 1 World War II veteran, 22 Korean War veterans, and 192 Vietnam era veterans. There was 127 U.S. Army soldiers, 16 Marines, 22 Air Force, 50 Navy, no Coast Guard, and no Space Force. That was on these 2 flights. Okay.
Yep, I'm just going through the pictures that we have, so you guys feel free to share, or if you want me to stop on a specific one.
I'm gonna have to turn my own chair so I can see.
You can get over there. Yeah.
Do you want me to just start then?
Sure. Do you want me to move to your pictures, Ed? Your personal
there's
pictures?
there are some pictures I took there that she'll be going through. But just to give you a little bit of background, I grew up in Roseville, Minnesota, and Falcon Heights area. Went to Alexander Ramsey High School. Went to St. Olaf College. While I was in college at St. Olaf, recruiters came from the Navy because it was during a period where people were getting drafted, just the beginning of the Vietnam conflict. And so they gave us an opportunity to go in as officers if we graduated from college. So I managed to do that. And wound up then going to Officer Candidate School in Newport, Rhode Island. I think called 90-day wonders, where you become an officer without a huge amount of training. We definitely had the same military, tough basics and so forth, but we did that, and I was lucky enough then to get into the supply corps of the business, which is the food end of the business and the end of the money and the parts and things like that. And so it was perfect because I did want to go into business with my father after I left the Navy. So I was in for 3.5 years, and went to Navy Supply Corps School down in Athens, Georgia for 6 months of training about the business end of the Navy. And then I was assigned to the USS Iwo Jima LPH-2, which is a helicopter carrier. It was the first one that was built from the ground up, from the keel up, they would say, specifically for helicopters. So it was like a small aircraft carrier. You didn't need as much runway, obviously, with those. So we had 500 enlisted men aboard our ship. We had 50 officers. And then when we'd go to Vietnam or other places, we would have a couple thousand Marines or Army with us and loaded our flight deck with helicopters and so forth. And the helicopter was a major way of transportation, getting things done in Vietnam, including landing troops, bringing back wounded, supply. Virtually everything was done with helicopters. So we worked really hard. I had 2 deployments over there, 6 months each. And so a lot of experiences there which you can talk about. Well, I'll just share a little bit more about that. Aboard ship, I was a supply corps officer, they call it. And I had, first I did dispersing, so I held the money. Example of that, I'd fly me ahead of the ship into, let's say, Hong Kong, and I get $1 million in small bills and put them in gunny sacks, and we'd count them and take them back aboard ship. And then when the ship would come into a port, I'd go ahead of the ship sometimes. So we're going to Japan, I get Japanese yen and so forth. So the guys would be paid, and so when they hit the beach, we got off the ship after being there for months. It was, they spent their money. Anyway, the $1 million definitely probably wound up in the Orient. A lot of it was done, though. We did have, like, those days there was no computers aboard ship, so I was blessed to be the officer that was the first one to install a computer aboard our ship, or be responsible. I didn't install it. I was definitely, civilians did all that. There was a huge room where I had people sitting there punching cards, and the cards would be read into the deal, go on to use magnetic tapes, and that would go into the computer, and then we didn't know what to do with it so much. So it was still the early days, and so they were really just getting experience, and they did get a little lessons on how to do DOS and a couple things, and so we did manage to get our payroll on there and a couple things, but now of course your watch does much more than the whole room full of stuff we had. After I did the disbursement, the financial, and then the computer thing, I was in charge of the food for the officers and so forth. So I had like 15 Filipino men working for me. Those men made more money than anybody in their hometowns, and so they supported a lot of their families and other people through the money they earned. And while they appeared to be very professional and so forth, we did great meals and great food. One of the things about the Navy, it is good food. But then I went home with them on the weekends, whatever, if we were in the Philippines, which was our home away from home. And they would basically they take off their uniform, put a machete between their teeth, whatever, and climb a coconut tree and start whacking off coconuts and so forth. So it was a little different world. They were living in 2 different worlds that learned a little bit more about their life, and they would roast a pig or whatever for us. So I had a great experience. Our home away from home was more the Philippines when we weren't off the coast of Vietnam. Back to the dispersing part, one of the fun things I enjoyed about that was they would lower me on a helicopter on a cable, because a lot of the small ships hadn't been paid for a long time. The reason I needed so much money is because so many ships hadn't been paid, so they'd lower me on a cable down to the deck there, and I would go pay the people, and they'd come back and lower the cable down from the helicopter and haul me back up and try to take off. And I loved the view, and I loved the excitement of that at the time. There's different seasons for life, as you know, and this season I probably wouldn't be doing that. But I definitely loved what I did, and as far as the excitement of that, and it was touch and go a lot of times. It was amazing. Off the coast of Vietnam, we did have a lot of, it was a war. I could sip iced tea on my flight deck and observe the battle going on with bombs going off and things like that in Vietnam. Basically, in Supply Corps, we're one of the 80% of the people that are in the military that support the 20% that actually do the fighting. So I was blessed to felt like more an observer, but also experiencing it. So I didn't really affect me much. I don't have any post-traumatic stress or anything, but started looking back in my life, how different it would have been if I hadn't have gone in the military. It gave me a desire to meet other cultures and other groups around the world and to travel and things like that. And but I did miss out on marrying probably a girl that I might have been in high school or college, whatever. So the experience then after doing that, I charged the spare parts for the ship and for the helicopters and so forth, and did that. So mind you, this is just graduating from college as a young kid, didn't know what he was doing, and I was wise enough in those days to know that I didn't know beans about what's going on around there. And so I relied on to these guys who knew what's going on to do the work. They've been around for a while, they knew how to get things done and so forth. So I felt a little bit more like a figurehead sometimes, just there to support them and support whatever our mission was. And it was a great life in a lot of ways, because there was a camaraderie that developed in that, and it's more so then, I think, than it might be now in the military. So I installed a computer aboard ship, and I also mentioned that, so those are my major things that I did before, but the fifth thing probably was of interest would be that I had a top secret clearance I'd gotten. I found out from my family that they interviewed my neighbors and everything to make sure I had a top secret clearance. So I did encrypting or decoding of messages during what they call general quarters. So for a war situation, you go to a room, you're locked in pretty much, and I would decode messages coming in on wheels and so forth. We have to change them each day. Anyway, so that was what I did in when we were called general quarters or a situation where we're more in a war situation. I mean, we were blessed. We were not being attacked in our ship as such. We had guards there. I mean, somebody saw bubbles going away from the ship one time, and they just decided to maybe there's something wrong. Anyway, I'll shorten things out. Basically, the blessing was that I did those things, and then after I left the Navy, I started working for my father in Minneapolis area, and then wound up starting a peace organization. The reason I mentioned that, kind of gone from, I do little cards I passed out to the military people, I'll just pass them out here, but from the war situation to doing world peace work. So in Detroit Lakes, we formed a nonprofit called One Heart, One Mind, and we have it called Vantage Point Peace Center, which is my wife, whose name is Ruth Ann Ranstrom. She passed away over 20 years ago of cancer. But we have a peace organization here. We have the farm that we do world peace work, and we're different cultures around the world, the Aborigine in Australia and different people, the Japanese World Peace Prayer Society, where we dedicate peace bowls, like you may have seen at the Central Rotary Park and things like that. So it's kind of a summary of the background, so I get a sense of what I've been about doing and involved with. So the cards, a friend of mine, Diane Gehrke, who's the third person involved in our peace organization, she's also a member of Engage, suggested I make up a little card pass out from the war days to the peace days. So I got a bunch of those left over, so I'll just pass those out. But I think that's my background, so I'd pass that on. Give you a background on what it was about before it. The main thing about what's so incredible about the honor, the flight, is that we were the Vietnam War was the earlier stages. So when I came back, it wasn't too bad. I just took out my uniform and started working as a business. So. But others came back later on in the military, so they were called baby killers and were spit on and things like that because there was so much against the war in Vietnam. And obviously, if the politicians make the decisions, we're just carrying out what we're asked to do. But this was an incredible experience with this too, the honoring and so forth. And I mentioned each of us brought a little letter along. One of the things that happened at our there, they passed out, they had a mail call, and they passed out letters to us that were written by our family and friends. And we had a chance to receive those as part of the honoring. So, thank you.
Yeah.
I think I'll take that mic out of the holster and get away from those. I don't know how Teri had this set up on the pictures, but initially, how we get started to be on the honor flight. Maybe I better leave that alone.
No, yeah, it's touchy, but you're okay.
Anyway, to get on the honor flight, Curt, Erickson, myself, and Dave Woolman, who isn't here today, there was 8 of us, and actually 9. I had a picture up there that you can even send that around, because those are the 9 of us that were from Detroit Lakes. They were honored to be on it. I didn't even know. Curt and I and Dave went. We got to Fargo, and we met these other 5 or 6 people from Detroit Lakes and had this. We all just got, half of you put in your name. I think there's 900 on the list now, but so it ends up, the list keeps growing. But there was about 900 on the list, so we got selected. It took about 2.5 years, but when you get that call, it's kind of like an honor. It is. But anyway, we got to go to Fargo. So you start off with, they have a pre-flight. Once you get that notice, and that was in July, and then about I can't remember the exact day, but in September sometime, early, maybe even August, it was a pre-flight. You go to Fargo, and some of these pictures, that's what we're going to kind of follow around. But there's a pre-flight. You go up there and you get your hat, your coat, you get all the stuff you need, and you find out who your captain is going to be. That young lady right there, Luann, what a great lady. She took care of our bus and really did a good job. I think this was her 16th time. She got involved real early with this program, and so she's taking. And so anyway, there's a guy I know.
Yeah.
He came from Branson. But anyway, there we are. We're getting our clothes and stuff at that pre-flight in Fargo. And I don't know how fast you'll go through these or whatever, but
There's
a lot of pre-flight. But that's kind of, so you start, and so there was, like I said earlier, when they did this, there was 215 soldiers on two planes. $270,000 a plane. It costs that much to put each plane. So it's about $600,000 with incidentals, and they do that twice a year now. So when we get asked later about doing fundraisers and stuff, it's very important, and but it's a real expensive endeavor, and it's all taken care of. The people, the communities that put in the money and events to make this happen for the soldiers, it's the greatest thing. I mean, you had a question?
Tell them that there's no tax money.
No tax money used.
No tax money.
No tax money. It's all donated money. It's not, so these donations come from, like for instance, our jackets, American Crystal donated. I think, I just read in that paper, I think there's, the uniforms for each flight was $15,000, just so, double that, $30,000 just for the uniforms for us to go. So anyway, once you get to Fargo, and then, so when the day comes, you go to Fargo. I think, oh yeah, so now we're in Fargo.
Early one.
And the musicians are outside, the bagpipers are playing music for us as we're coming in that morning. Escorted right into the building upstairs, and then, of course, Curt and I, Dave, by accident, Tracy Briggs, in this area, Tracy Briggs in Fargo. Maybe I should leave that thing.
You're
He's
coming
all
through.
right.
You're coming through.
Yeah, you sound good.
Anyway, so the flight, the start of this flight, I don't know if we got that information on how the honor flight started. I think it was like, I'm just going to use a number, it was like 2005. Some general or some officer, he got together just in Ohio or some state, and he had World War II veterans there, and he talking about how many had been to see the monument there, because the World War II monument was open, and none of them had and would probably never have the ability to go there. So he took it upon himself to fly 6 individuals, or 6 months later he came back, if the story is right, and he came back and he said he took, for 1 month, each month he took 1. Well, he had a buddy that had 2 planes, and he could take, at 6 planes, he could take 2. So eventually it started with that, and they made it, that's how it started. With 6 people, and then 6 planes with 6. So it got started, and ended up, they started, it was in 2005, but I think it was about 2007 or 8, and Tracy Briggs got wind of this in Fargo, and she made a real big presentation, and she got the Fargo Moorhead area really involved in it. And so she's, to this day, is one of the major fundraisers, the reason it got started out of this Fargo Moorhead area. And a lot of these fundraisers, a lot of the honor flights, I think there's 129 places in the United States that you can get on an honor flight. And out of the Fargo Moorhead, there's I think 17 counties in Minnesota and 21 counties in North Dakota that get on in the Fargo. And so I think there's, anyway, that's how they come up. That if you want to get on the Fargo, Minnesota one, that's where you have to come from. That's where they select you.
What, can I ask you?
Yes.
Yeah.
What's the criteria for getting selected?
Okay, if I have it correct, at this time, you have to have an honorable discharge, and you have to have enlisted or been drafted prior to May 1st, 1975. That, I believe, is the criteria at this time.
Yep, I believe you're right.
Yeah, and so I'm sure I'm thinking when they first started this, you had to be World War II and in Korea, because they wanted to, now it's pretty much down to the Vietnam era and a few Korean veterans left. And obviously there's still like 1 or 2 in World War II, but not many. So that's the basic criteria.
So once you submit your application, provided if there's any health issues or extenuating circumstances where you would need to get on an earlier flight, you would just go on the wait list, and we just go by the numbers and how quickly we can fill planes and get everybody out there.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
And another thing, it's just this operation is so refined, and they're so dedicated that they don't miss nothing. So once you get selected, or once you put your name in, and so you put your name in, and I was like 2 or 2.5 years ago. At that time, they said you have been selected to be on an honor flight in the future. And so once you got that letter back, it might be a year, it might be 2 years, but since the time when we were on, there was three soldiers that had died between the time that they were called that they could be on the flight, and they are honored just like we are when they get there. It's kind of moving. Let's see. Well, we got to supposed to move along, but because I can babble on. But I mean, it's a great thing, and it's hard not to get emotional. I mean, so as we go, so there I know where we're at right now. But we left.
Just got off the plane.
Okay, so we got off the plane in Baltimore.
Yeah.
And there you receive, there's people at the, meeting you there, there's all kinds of people welcoming you in. And then from there we got on our planes, and we went to Fort McHenry, And if you had never been, because it landed in Baltimore, because the Washington D.C. airport apparently is pretty busy, so it's an hour away, but it must be just as easy to get you there. And then I think maybe that's why but the Fort McHenry.
Fort McHenry.
We're still at.
This is Fort McHenry.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, I didn't realize that, you talk about, I think Ed mentioned, getting, being grown up, I didn't want to get too much in my own personal life, but growing up in Detroit Lakes, little farm boy, didn't know much about life, you don't, and so you're going to go to the military. I was 17 when I got out of high school. I wanted to join. My dad said, you're going to go to the military. I went, okay, but when I graduated in '69, and people know that the Tet Offense was going on pretty big then, so Daddy wasn't sure he wanted his son to go, so he wouldn't sign. So anyway, I started working carpenter and went to vocational school, and as soon as my deferment was out of vocational school, then my number was up, so I got drafted. So indirectly, I really wanted to serve, so it's kind of forced me to be there, but it caused you to get out and learn a lot about life, so I think it was a great thing. I was going to go with that. But Fort McHenry then, that is the greatest place. So we get there in Baltimore, we fly in there, and the guy out there, remember it wasn't long ago when that ship hit the bridge, that's right out of Baltimore. Like I say, getting cultured, I hadn't been there. Here you look out there 2-3 miles out, here's that bridge still crumbled down. Well, that's right inside from back when Sir Francis Scott Key was, how you say his name, that's where the Battle of the British, happened there, and you've seen that a few pictures earlier here, the guys at the cannons, and it's a very historic place. It's where our
Star Spangled Banner.
Our Star Spangled Banner was wrote while he was out at sea. He wrote it as a poem and came back obviously as a song actually, but that's the battlefield, and there's the gun emplacements that were there. And so the ships were out and to me it's just important. The ships were out at sea, they knew they had these cannons there, and the British knew that they could stay out 2 miles or whatever, they couldn't shoot to them. But the guys figured out that they heated up these cannonballs, red hot, and they shot them. They actually lobbed them off the water into the sides of the bows, and the ships would start on fire. They figured that out. Pretty interesting. And this flag, that's interesting. That's 30 by 42, I believe it is. And that flag can be flown on that flagpole. We unfurled that thing. And it's interesting, that flag had like 16, I think it had 16 stripes. And anyway, we had 13, and so there was 2 states. So I shouldn't get into history, I'm not very good at it. But anyway, the flag had an extra stripe, and it was because 2 states weren't part of the original 13. But anyway, we unfolded and folded it back up. And I had about a 15-minute, the guy there just kind of kept taping what was going on, how the whole history of the post and how it all came down. I suppose we better move along here. But anyway, it's very interesting. If you ever get a chance to go there, or if you're in that Baltimore area, you got to stop there and see it. It's a great, and to me, it was enlightening to realize that's actually where our country started and the way we are today, really. Here's a bridge. I think that bridge was probably just out there a ways. You probably could see that.
After Fort McKinley, where did you guys go?
Still there.
Yeah, and again, we had on the planes with us. There was a couple of gals. They were photographers. They were just taking, all the time. So they put that. I think there's 2,000 pictures in here. So now we're at now this is where we all got together at the World War II Memorial. That was the second place we visited out there. And then the Washington Monument. And history of the Washington Monument, if you look close at that, I wasn't aware of it, but it got built I can't remember you don't show so much there, but about a third of the way up, that's where that thing got stalled. They got out of money in the 1800s, and then they came back, and so the rock is a little different color. So you look at it and see there's 2 colors in it. Okay. See right here. Part of World War II monument there yet. Curt, You can talk if you want.
Nope, you go ahead.
I don't have to keep rambling. Guys, we'll just keep rambling on here then. Yeah, there'd be so she can have to move, if we only have an hour, we'll have to go through this a little faster, I expect.
Each island is a different state, huh?
How's that?
Yeah.
Yeah, that,
Yeah.
Different states.
yeah, there's every state there. And then, of course, the way they have that World War II memorial set up is the east side and the west side, east, you know, east and west. You know, just go.
We can, yep.
But well, every time when we stopped and we went on the bus, so there's each flight. Okay, this is at that
Social
night,
that night.
at the social.
Yeah.
Tell them what's going on in the Hyatt right now.
Yeah. Yeah, what's going on at Hyatt right now? I just think watching the news just before I came in this morning. The president-elect and his group are all backing up to that thing, and all the big family are having a big powwow there before he went to the White House, but with the senator representatives this morning, in the same hotel we were in. It's pretty fancy. I know if I hadn't went with this flight, I probably would never stay there. I think it's $500 a night to stay there, and $75 for dinner. So yeah, and that's what this place did for us. Yeah, great. Yeah, so we're at a social that night. That's the only time both flights were together. There was, you know, 400 of us in that room. And after that meeting, their first night, then we switched it. Each flight, and it's amazing how they were able to do this. You get there. There's so many memorials to go, and there's each flight had 4 buses, so we had, you know, like 200, about 50 on each bus, and so it was Alpha and Bravo, but they somehow or another during the 2.5 days we were there, I never seen the other buses. You just kind of how they coordinated it, so they knew we wouldn't be at the same memorial at the same time. Okay, so this is our schedule then for Monday. National Archives, you ever had a chance to go there? That was kind of neat. You know, go up see the Constitution and the National Forum, and that's a level 4 security to get in there. So it took us a while to get into that building, but we all got in and see some of the Bill of Rights and all the other things that are in there.
So this, where are we at?
Yeah, let's see where we're at here.
Yep, that's still there.
Still there. Yeah.
So, yep.
Sorry guys, there's a lot of pictures, so
You're
just
doing
take it in.
great.
Yeah,
Yeah, just you have to. And then, so before we went in there, they took a picture of our whole bus. I think that's what that was outside there.
This is the archives. Oh, wow.
There are people taking
Oh, they're
pictures,
still
taking
in there.
pictures while in there. You
Yeah.
can take pictures, but no photography, no lights. It's like, yeah.
Is that hard on the older print, the light?
Right, lighting
The
break down.
flashes.
Yeah, the lighting will break down the artifacts. I guess that's what you call it. Yeah, it's pretty interesting to see history right up like that and be able to be there. That's again, that's one of those things that yeah,
Yeah, we're still there.
it's all behind glass. Yeah, we're still there.
Dave,
There's 1,000 pictures. I don't know if she can get through these a little fast. The decoration.
Yep. We can, yeah, sorry.
No. It's like I'll stay here till noon. I don't know if these guys will.
That's the Navy.
The only problem is we
That's
just
Navy.
don't want to run out of time.
Okay.
Question?
is this on a web page that we both?
There is. Yes. You guys can take this.
How
She's
many
got
of these
a.
do you have? Did you bring
Good.
them?
We put them
Whatever
all
the-
out by the sign-in table,
Perfect.
so
Yep.
there's.
It's their web, their
Yep.
North Dakota.
Right on the bottom, it's right here,
Yeah.
right there.
Yeah, it's just, they have a web page and it's right in this form, but when you get it before you go out, it's North Dakota, Minnesota honor flight. And you can, this will all be, this here, 2 days or this particular flight, I think they're all on there. So yeah, it'd be interesting. So maybe you can go through this and you can take time yourself to look through it. Okay, where are we at here now?
Navy.
Navy, yeah, there's that lone sailor right there, yeah, in the middle.
Oh yeah, the Navy Museum.
Okay.
He missed his boat.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then they said, went to the time you get an hour or two by the time you get to these places and load up, you know, sometimes you got to stay a little longer, but of course every place you went there, they had a little place you could shop, you could bring home some trinkets, which is hard for me to leave, but.
There he is.
Okay. And so every place we went, then if you were Navy, and went to the Navy Memorial. memorial. They took a group of Navy people at one time. But as he's paging through these, I'm trying to. Once we get over the Arlington Cemetery and the
There.
changing of the, oh yeah, I can't miss the
That's the,
Marine, and there's the Air Force Memorial.
right.
Yeah. And that's kind of interesting to me. And, you know, I've been Army, but the Air Force, they kind of unique what they had there.
What's interesting about the Air Force Memorial, I'll just briefly say that where we were standing was right where the plane came through. It hit the Pentagon. It would have what you see there, if that plane would have come in now, it would have hit those pillars. It was it's the Air Force was doing the forward direction of flying, thing. But it was interesting to stand there because you look one way and see the hotel where they just knocked the antennas off the hotel. And you look down the other way and you can see the Pentagon where it hit. So.
Wow.
This is a pretty famous memorial, obviously. Have you seen that? And that memorial, if you look at it, they kind of tell it when you look there quick, but if you take that picture at home and they say there's, if you took to 6 soldiers there, and there's 13 hands. The hand of God, I guess, what we assume, but so you have to look at that and take a little closer look at it. Yeah. Whoever made that, it's pretty interesting. Vietnam.
Not good.
Yeah.
Not good.
Anyway, it was kind of a rainier day this day now. So what's interesting here, as we move along here and we get to here we are at the Arlington Cemetery. Well, as we're flying, I don't know if we should get more pictures, but to me, we were on the bus and the gal that was doing a lot of pictures and doing all our Facebook Live, her husband at that, I don't think she was married at the time, but her husband was actually a guard. He was a horse riding in Arlington Cemetery. Apparently they have guards that ride all the way around there day and night just watching the cemetery. Well, he was on his horse on top of the hill. He's talking about the Air Force. You probably didn't hear this story, but this gal said her husband was on a horse, and when that plane flew over his head, he watched that hit the Pentagon.
Oh.
Right. He was riding his horse right, and the height you can't envision this unless you're there. It's he had to almost hit those trees because Arlington and the Pentagon is like a couple, ain't that high, but poof, it's 100 feet higher. So he had it. So they said and that guy who rode that horse, he said it's the only time, because you always treat your horse as your life. It's the only time you let that horse run back to a stable. The only time. But he said, at the time, he said you didn't know what was going on. Okay.
Yeah, there's still.
So this
Changing of the guard.
the change in the guard, to me, unknown soldier, to me, it's moving. So that day, it was kind of like today, I guess, actually, really a foggy, misty day. It was almost surreal. You're sitting there and watching that thing, and there's not live footage, but listen to them click their heels, and just every movement is so crisp and so meaningful. I mean, it's great, and just to be the fact that you stand right there. Well, just the other day, your whole life, you see that, and you see that here the other day. The president just did a change in the guard, did the same thing here. And Veterans Day, he was there for. But yeah, that's just if you ever get a chance. But to be there on a day when it was seemed just more meaningful. And he changed that guard. Like in the summer, because it's hot, they change every half hour. In the winter, I don't know what months they do that, they get an hour to march on it.
Changing of the guard.
And that day we went from there to the Ladies Museum, I think. Yeah, right, Women's Museum. That's a new memorial they just opened up. Women in the military, I know it's questionable how you feel or don't feel, but they really taking a role now, and now they've made a decision to get the memorial right. It's right next to the Arlington Cemetery, right off the back side of the Arlington Cemetery. And it was kind of a neat little picture that young lady captain. People probably know the story. I don't, but I think she was saying goodbye to her dog.
Yeah, that was it. Oh, yeah. That's the
Was
bank
there
with
a
that night.
nurse one that you saw?
How was that?
A nurse one? It was.
Yes, but it was all in there, but I didn't take, didn't have enough time. It's just another memorial, part of it inside there. There's sections within that. You probably know that, you could tell that story probably better. But yeah, there was different sections, but we didn't have time to go through them all, but I could read through them. I just was intrigued by that dog as you come through the front door. Myself, I noticed it here, and I don't know who took that picture.
So, in those pictures, Amy Klobuchar stopped by to say hello. Couldn't be political, couldn't be doing, but she did say hello and greet some people there.
She was the one in the blue, right, up at the top?
Yeah, the one in the blue, yeah.
Yeah.
And the night before, Amy Klobuchar came on Monday night, but Fishbuck was there on Sunday night. But they came in the room. One thing nice about this, if you look at the whole thing we're doing here, who's that guy? You know what's interesting is that picture is, that gal, she teaches school here. She was a para with my daughter-in-law. And I work in the schools a lot. I'm a contract worker. And I hadn't seen that gal. And she had to come introduce herself to me here. I'm para, worked with your daughter-in-law. So I guess that's what the hug is about. I guess people know me. I like hugging anyway. But that's a separate story.
Mail call?
Mail call, yeah. Well, golly, we got to stop at the mail call here. It's Ed's idea, I think, but we'll all go with that. So anyway, if you're in the military, you all know when you're off, gone, away from home, 18, 20 years old, it's pretty important to make a mail call. So when that mail call came, if you didn't listen any other time of the day, you waited for that first sergeant or whoever delivering mail. So one of the things they did for this trip, which surprised me, usually I catch on to things, but somehow another day, when you put your name on the list, you get somebody to be with your wife, and who else would be next. But part of the deal is that's the person that they send a letter to. Keep it secret, get letters to these guys. So later on in that second night when we had your meal, that part of the program is to have this mail call. And so everybody got their letters. So, and you don't know who you're going to get them from. I didn't know we were getting, but we all, I guess, are supposed to read a letter here to kind of let you know how people think about you when they on the mail call. So we'll do that now.
Yeah. So this was the second night, the night dinner, the final dinner. And just so you know, a lot of the honor flights they started out, they did it all in one day. They'd fly in and fly out that same night. We were there 3 days. And it was amazing. Love to stay longer, of course. But the surprise to me what the dinner was, and they said, well, the mail call. And I said, mail call. So some guys started getting packages of letters in. And I said, well, geez, how do people know about where they're even here? And then I got one. And Diane Gehrke, who's part of Engage Group here, had been the one who, they contacted her, and then she contacted my kids. So I got several letters from my family all acknowledging me. And so again, part of the honoring thing was just unbelievable. But this is the one that kind of, you talk about what we saw and what we did, but this gives you a sense of more of the heart of it. So this is what Diane sent to me. Dear Edward, as you prepare for your journey on the honor flight, I want to take a moment to express my heartfelt gratitude for your service and dedication as a Navy officer during the Vietnam War, as a testament of your courage and commitment to our country. You played a vital role in ensuring the food and money supply aboard the USS Iwo Jima, contributing to the well-being of your fellow sailors. Your efforts did not go unnoticed, and they made a significant difference during a challenging time. In honor of your service, here's a short verse. So she wrote this. In the heart of the ocean where courage meets the tide, you stood as a beacon with honor as your guide. Edward Gehrke, a name we hold dear, your service and sacrifice we proudly revere. Through trials and storms, you kept spirits high. With food and supplies, you helped others get by. As you embark on this journey, know you are esteemed, a hero in our hearts, fulfilling a dream. Thank you, Edward, for your bravery and dedication. Enjoy every moment of your honor flight. With deepest appreciation, Diane Gehrke. So that's what I received in the mail call. I'm not knowing it's coming. So.
I'm not very good at this, and this is from my grandson. Dear Grandpa, I just wanted to say thank you. Thank you for all your hard. He writes like I do, I can't. Thank you for all you have done for me and my family. Thank you for inspiring me to join and serve. And thank you for your 35 years of service. All the weekends, 2 weeks in the summer, the state active duty. You did so much for your country and your state. You sacrificed so much time away. I don't think we can thank you enough for all you did. It truly inspires me to continue to serve, to attempt to fill your boots. I love trading war stories after each training exercise. Also, your bug net came in handy. He used it at summer camp. One more piece of exciting news. My battalion commander wants me to take company command soon. Anyway, we need to make it up to DL again real soon. Josie is almost walking. I hope you are having so much fun on your honor flight. We love you and talk to you soon. Abram. Our great granddaughter. She was not about a year now, so she is walking.
So, when you're in the Army, you get, most of the military, you start out in the unit, as a young soldier or whatever, but I ended up becoming a first sergeant in the Detroit Lakes National Guard, which, and if you do military, that's the highest rank within the company. But above that, you take all your orders from your commander, company commander. The company has a commander, and you have platoon leaders and platoon sergeants. So I get, get this. I had quite a pack of letters. I didn't think I had that many friends, but I pick out. It's kind of tearjerking. Even though it's only 1 or 2 lines, you haven't seen these people or heard them for 2-3 years. But all of a sudden, my son was the guy who was in charge of getting names out. So I don't know how he got that many names out or how he got that many letters back in 10 days or whatever it was. But the company commander one sort of struck me kind of interesting. I got this back from my company commander. He was like, Dear First Sergeant Knopf, Sue and I sincerely hope that the Veterans Honor Flight in Minnesota was a wonderful experience for you and your fellow veterans that attended. It was such an honor to have served with you at Detroit Lakes Delta Company. You were the best man. I feel that you were the best then, and I feel that the same today. I couldn't wait to work with you when I found out I was going to lead Detroit Lakes Unit. Those years of serving with you were so special and precious to me. You have always been a solid model for our soldiers, me included. Dave, your work ethic, drive, determination, honesty, integrity are second to none that I've worked with. And remember, I worked with lots of Boy Scouts too. Your commitment and service to the community, Detroit Lakes, state of Minnesota, and the United States are impeccable. Thank you for sharing your special times and your precious and wonderful family with Sue and I, his wife. And you and your family have always been so warm and friendly to us. I have and will forever be grateful and thankful for the blessing to call you Diane and your wonderful family friends. Thank you, King of the Hill. Respectfully, Wade Bastian. He was my company commander. And then a lot of you people know Hans Gilsdorf. Hans Gilsdorf, I don't want to but I wanted to read that for the company commander. I thought, well, Hans Gilsdorf is really quite a nice, hard-working guy. He does a lot for the community. So if you looked at the north side of the VFW, he made the faces of 6 soldiers, and kind of sideways in the different wars and different. Well, he made one for me of me. I mean, that was incentive of the letter. So, with the letter. Thank you, Dave, for your service and dedication to our country, our state, and community. Fellow servicemen and women, and especially your family. It's people like you that make our lives all that very much better. You inspired us to work harder, help around You constantly demonstrate the significance and leading hand, being present, and most importantly, never forgetting. I am grateful to have you in my life and call you a friend. You've been a part of my family for many years, many decades. I built it, and his family owned the lakeside. For building the lakeside while putting up with my dad, the construction, he called it destruction, building our home, kept our schools being in the best, and you even taught me the Norwegian flat screen, winter spearing. I took him fishing with me. He just thought that was the greatest thing. I took him out in a spear house, and he called it his flat screen. By golly, our community shines because of folks like you. Keep it up, and again, thank you, Dave, for being you. Your friend, Hans Gilsdorf.
Thanks for sharing those letters, you guys. That was
I don't know how long you guys have, if she's got time even to run it along here, but otherwise we may have to. Okay, so
Vietnam.
this is Vietnam Wall. Now, did we go through hopefully the Korean War will come too.
Yeah.
So the next day, if you've been to Washington, the Korean War Memorial, the Vietnam Wall, Lincoln Memorial in Washington, they're all in that same area. So these pictures are probably in that area. So here we're at the wall.
I'm just gonna keep scrolling. Yep.
So this is the Vietnam Memorial. There's Vietnam Memorial. So if you guys, that's been, I don't know how many times that's been in the area, and it's really kind of moving, to see it and go there. You can scrape the names of people, but when you actually go right in Washington, that's pretty interesting there. That's a pretty big, those granite slates. I think they're about 10 feet tall on the center ones, and so you normally. Yeah, and so it kind of goes up the hill there, but I know you're not supposed to walk on the grass, it's a federal park, but some people's names were up on top, so I know one or two of the people, the staff were allowed to go up there and do those prints for you if you wanted to. But yeah, over 58,000 men and women's names engraved into those granite stones. And again, I think when you do this thing, to have the ability to do it in a day like today, where it seems like it seems to mean more when there's a mystic fog to something. It seems like it adds more like there's a secondary life there or something. And that was the same I felt when I was there, and the same when we do so if you ever get a chance to go there, it's kind of interesting. They give you those papers, and I found a couple of friends of mine, that Errol Kent from Ogama and David Steyer from up at Ogama. I got their names, I brought them back to the families. So that's kind of there. I assume there'd be more Korean War. Yeah. So it's really, I guess if you have an opportunity to go to Washington yourself, they should do it. You had the time. There's tours that will do it like in the 4 hours at a night. There's a whole different look to it if you do it at night versus the day. But we didn't have that opportunity. But anyway, if you do, but it's right here, the Korean Memorial. It's I think there's 18 figures in there, and they all have and so when you're wearing that poncho, is there any Korean War veterans in here? And the Korean War, it just must have been the idea of those ponchos. It must have worn them, but that day, a rainy, foggy day, the helmets, again, it just felt like you were probably in the pads with them. And just outside Vietnam. And of course, the Lincoln Monument. That's interesting, just amazing. It's bigger than life almost, but you think back, of course, on here, Lincoln was bigger than life too. If we think back what he did for us in our country. Interesting little thing there. So while we were there, Curt wasn't, but Dave Owen and I were there, and we're standing talking with Senator Hogan was allowed to come up. Again, the same way, they let the politicians there, but they only were there to let us know they're there, so you wanted to talk to them, you could. They didn't put them as a highlight. They kept everything in the military tone. We didn't go to the White House, we didn't go to the Capitol, they didn't make notice areas, but this was for the soldiers and it was about the monuments, not the political part of Washington. And they talk about dirty Washington, we didn't see that because the national parks don't want to be known, so they keep these parks up beautiful. There was no grass, there was nothing out of place. So when I hear about Washington DC, I have a total different image than what they talk about, because we didn't go down. We stayed at the Hyatt and we went to here, right?
Here's the National Museum,
Okay,
the Army.
Yeah, this is the Army Museum here.
Yeah.
It was the last place we went, I think, kind
Yes, it was.
of. Tanker, that's what I originally got drafted in. When I got drafted, it was Fort Knox, Kentucky. Got the guard the vault there a couple of nights too while I was down there. I think they say there was gold in there. And there's all these, so our flight, what I say, there was, most of us were Army. So this is all the Army people that were on our flight.
Mhm.
Pretty interesting.
Oh, yeah.
And this is just off they just opened this Army Museum. This is, all the other memorials are pretty much all right in downtown Washington DC area, but this Army Memorial now, they just opened this recently, I think in 22. It's just off the front gate. I think there's like 84 acres off of Fort Belvedere, which is just, a ways out of town. I don't know if it's 10 miles or what it is, but
Yeah.
yeah, and then we're all getting our picture taken there.
We did.
And
Maybe now.
we're heading, soon we'll be heading back to, these are all pictures still in the Army Museum.
Yeah, they had sections for each wars and.
Again, we didn't, it's, some of these memorials, we wish we had more time
Oh,
to go through them. And
yeah, that was a good one.
yeah, there's a picture one that we had there. The gal took that and put it on
Yeah,
there.
we came home.
Okay, yeah, that's when we got back to Fargo. So, from there we left there, and of course we went back to Baltimore, got on our airplanes. Again, the same way, people helping you and being there to thank you. But coming back to Fargo, coming home, yeah, it's an amazing thing when you, and I think probably this time maybe more so. You see, that's a natural feeling right there. That you get that kind of honor. You really don't know if you deserve it or not. But anyway, it's kind of a coming back and to see hundreds of people in the airport there. And this honor flight, you got to give them enough credit. How they coordinate two flights. They make sure that the planes land far enough apart so that you can both get honored in your own time, and yet people don't have to wait too long. I mean, I think they slowed our plane down 20 minutes or so just so we let the other ones out of the airport. So I honestly believe that, so they didn't come in at the same time. That's how coordinated this effort is and how wonderful it make you feel. When you come back there, and I don't know how many people were there. I'd say 500. I could be wrong. At least, it was amazing.
There was a lot of people.
And the band again playing. I don't know if you guys know Esther Broman or not. Her band was playing there when we got back. She's in a veterans group. I can't remember her. She plays in so many different bands. One of her groups played there for that night. They played all the different songs, the different branch songs. And you get to meet your families and everybody coming back. But it's and
Shot, there we go, of the airport.
yeah, that's it.
There,
Oh,
yep.
look at that.
So that's
Yeah.
coming down the escalator.
Yeah, coming down the escalator into the
Yeah.
airport. That's the people there.
Yeah.
Music playing, people shaking. They don't put tears in your eyes. You probably shouldn't have went. And again, all these people, the 215 soldiers, Marines, airmen, all were basically from Jamestown in the North Dakota up towards Grand Forks, and then from Minnesota border down towards Alexandria to Park Rapids, I think. We had a lot of Perm and Frazee people on Alexandria from Minnesota. And now we get back, there'll be we got one more little hit for us on the 23rd. We get to go up and they made that big picture you see taken out there under this World War II memorial. I think they make a picture of that at 20 by something, 30 maybe, give each one of us one of those, and another supper to thank us for coming and being part of it. And all the time you're on the buses, every time you start and stop, they had water, they had food, they had wheelchairs, they had anything you needed. There was I mean, it was just so great. And I don't know, my roommate, I don't know how many know Al Breivik. He was a teacher. He worked at A&T. He was, he was my roommate, and we were there. And I'd known Al, but it was kind of interesting to talk about his time. He was in them a few years earlier, but since we've gotten back, he's been hospitalized 3 times already. Not doing his heart, so we have to pray for him because he's not doing well. I'm glad he got this flight in with me,
Yeah.
Oh, here's the band.
And even the airport in Fargo, the sheriff department escorted you up to the building and out to of course they're under remodel, so they brought us out wherever that other parking lot is. It was gonna be volleyball or soccer fields. They just made everything just so smooth and.
So we made it through all the pictures.
All right.
Do you guys have questions?
Yeah, we should take questions.
We have Angie too, who's.
Let Curt answer the question, so.
Just
Any-
question
Yes.
for you guys that have been there. Now that you've been there, wouldn't it be fun to go back and spend more time, like you said, to see all these monuments?
It definitely would be, and then maybe you'd have a little better idea. And I'd make sure I'd take them to the night tour at that time, because they claim it puts a whole different perspective on some of these different monuments when you have night shadow light on versus daylight. But yeah, if you. Yeah, man.
Does each veteran have someone come with, or are you?
Oh, okay. To answer that, no, you do, but you don't. If you need an escort, they want you to. If you need an escort, it can be a family member, not the same. They want one generation off.
Yeah.
Because that way no spouses can go with, because they want this to be a true veteran ceremony feeling. So if they have, it'd be like, unless the husband and wife are both, and we had one go, they were, but otherwise they don't want you to be, because they want you to be able to enjoy this with your veterans and talk stories, your military, but not be family. It just takes away from it. So yeah, and they don't want it to be the same generation as an escort, one generation down or whatever. That way you just keep. So yes, and they have to pay. And the way this is set up, if you're an escort, they have to pay their own way. Otherwise, if you don't need an escort, because it costs the flight a lot of money to get there. They have 200 seats. Well, there's still a fair portion of the people that work there. So I'd say on our flight there might have been 20, or on our maybe 30 that had escorts. The other 70 of us didn't need escorts or whatever. But they have a lot of staff, and you think there was 103 or 105 soldiers, and there's 200 or 187 on the plane or something. That's all support staff. Every time that bus stopped, the wheelchair, someone was responsible for the door, someone was responsible for getting the wheelchairs up, someone was responsible for the water and the food to follow us. And medical doctors, they were walking with us all the time. Medicine, everything you need. They couldn't think of anything that you needed that wasn't long.
For me, one of the most powerful things is when we first went there, before we took the flight, and they gave us our jackets and our hats and shirts and a duffel bag. The one man standing by me said, I said, well, what do you do? And he said, well, I'm at the VA. And I said, what do you do? I'm chief of staff. Here's my card. If you ever have any problems with VA, let me know. Whoa. And I was talking about powerful, and feeling that we have a very special area of our country here, and the VA in Fargo does a great job.
And other companies I'm just going to say American Crystal because they donated those coats. But American Crystal not only donated a coat, 4 employees at their company's salary were donating their time to be on that flight with us.